You have an eye infection, redness, swelling, blurry vision. You go to the doctor. He examines you calmly. Then he reaches for a small clay jar. Inside it, crocodile dung. He mixes it with a bit of honey and tells you to apply it directly to your eye. You are not being punished. This is an actual prescription, written down over 3,500 years ago in one of the most detailed medical documents in ancient history. Welcome to ancient Egypt, where some of the smartest medicine in the ancient world existed right alongside this. Stay until the end, because the twist in this story is something even most historians find genuinely surprising. In 1873, a German Egyptologist named Georg Ebers acquired an ancient scroll in Luxor that would later be named after him, the Ebers Papyrus. It dates to around 1550 BCE, making it one of the oldest and most complete medical documents ever discovered. The scroll is nearly 20 meters long when fully unrolled and contains over 700 medical remedies and formulas, covering everything from digestive disorders to skin conditions to parasites. Alongside genuinely accurate descriptions of the heart and the circulatory system, descriptions that wouldn't be matched in detail for well over 1,000 years, the papyrus casually recommends treatments involving the dung of crocodiles, gazelles, flies, donkeys, pelicans, and several other animals. For eye conditions specifically, crocodile dung mixed with sour milk was a documented and widely used remedy. For wounds, donkey dung was recommended as a direct application, often combined with other ingredients like honey or animal fat. For digestive ailments, certain dung-based mixtures were meant to be swallowed, a detail that tends to make modern audiences visibly uncomfortable. And for other ailments, the dung of different animals was chosen deliberately, based on a very specific internal logic that we'll get into shortly. Here's what most people miss when they first hear about this. This wasn't random, and it wasn't simply ignorance. Ancient Egyptian medicine operated on a coherent principle historians call sympathetic magic, the belief that an object's inherent properties could transfer to a patient through contact or use. Crocodiles were seen throughout Egyptian culture as powerful, aggressive, and dominant predators, closely associated with the god Sobek, who represented strength and protection. So crocodile dung was believed to carry some of that same protective, dominant force, useful for driving out evil spirits or malevolent influences, believed to cause infection and illness. Fly dung, oddly enough, was specifically used for ailments related to the eyes, because flies were constantly observed swarming around eyes, wounds, and areas of infection. The Egyptians closely associated the fly with the affliction itself, and believed that using a part of the fly could somehow counteract or neutralize the very problem it seemed to cause. It's completely incorrect by modern medical standards, obviously, but it wasn't stupidity. It was a coherent, structured belief system, applied with genuine consistency, and taught formally to new physicians for generations. In fact, Egyptian doctors trained in dedicated institutions called houses of life, attached to major temples, where this knowledge was recorded, studied, and passed down methodically. The papyrus is remarkably specific about which animal's dung to use, and for what particular condition. Crocodile dung, used for eye conditions, and also referenced in certain gynecological treatments meant to ward off harmful influences. Donkey dung, commonly used for digestive issues, open wounds, and even, in some documented cases, hair loss treatments. Gazelle dung, associated with certain skin conditions, likely due to the gazelle's reputation for having smooth, unblemished skin and coat. Fly dung, used specifically for eye ailments, tying back to the association we just covered. Even dung from birds like pelicans appears in some remedies, tied to entirely different symbolic associations involving the bird's behavior and reputation. Each choice tied directly back to the perceived qualities, reputation, or symbolic role of the animal itself: strength, speed, ferocity, cleanliness, or fertility. Doctors were not guessing on the spot. They were following a detailed, memorized, and formally taught system, passed down through structured medical education for generations, with specific texts and specific recommended dosages. If ancient history, this strange, this specific, and honestly this well-documented, is what you're here for, subscribe right now. We publish a new deep dive like this every single week. Here's the twist that modern researchers have actually found, and it's the part of this story that changes everything. Some animal dung, particularly from herbivorous animals, does contain trace antibacterial and antifungal properties, largely due to specific plant compounds that pass through the animal's digestive system without being fully broken down. Some modern studies on traditional folk medicine have found that specific fecal preparations, under very controlled circumstances, do contain measurable antimicrobial compounds. It's absolutely not effective or safe by modern medical standards, and in most historical cases, it introduced serious risk of infection from dangerous bacteria like tetanus, along with a range of other pathogens. But it wasn't purely superstition either. There was very likely some genuine, accidental, trial and error medical value buried inside an otherwise magical and symbolic belief system. The Egyptians had no concept of bacteria, viruses, or germs as we understand them today. They understood results, sometimes real, sometimes entirely coincidental, and built an extensive, structured framework of medicine around both, without any way to distinguish between the two. Here's the darker side of this story, and it's important to be honest about it. Modern medical historians widely believe that dung-based treatments, especially when applied to open wounds or sensitive areas like the eyes, likely caused as many new infections as they may have coincidentally treated or soothed. Tetanus, in particular, thrives in soil and animal feces, and ancient Egypt had absolutely no understanding of this connection between contamination and disease. So a treatment meant to heal an existing infection may have, in a significant number of documented cases, caused a much more dangerous and even fatal secondary infection. Archaeological and textual evidence suggests that infection-related complications were common enough that later remedies within the same papyrus attempt to address secondary symptoms that we now recognize as classic signs of severe bacterial infection. This is a pattern you'll see across almost all of ancient medicine, in nearly every culture, a genuine and often sophisticated desire to heal, built on a completely incomplete understanding of cause and effect. So here's what this story actually shows us, once you look past the initial shock of it. Ancient Egyptian medicine wasn't ignorant, careless, or unsophisticated. It was observant, highly structured, methodically documented, and in several areas, genuinely advanced for its time, particularly in surgery, dentistry, and anatomical observation. But without the ability to see bacteria, without any concept of germs or microscopic pathogens, even brilliant, careful, and well-trained doctors ended up prescribing treatments that were, by pure chance, sometimes mildly helpful and often deeply dangerous. It's a powerful reminder that good intentions, careful observation, and structured knowledge aren't enough on their own. You also need the right tools to actually see what's happening at a level invisible to the naked eye. The gap between what the Egyptians observed and what they could actually see is, in many ways, the entire story of medical history. If this made you appreciate modern eye drops and antibiotics just a little more than you did 5 minutes ago, let me know in the comments below. And if you want more stories like this, history that's simultaneously smarter and grosser than you expected, subscribe. New deep dive every week. See you next time.